Rene, what I see a lot is that companies are building digital solutions and then spending so much time on, for example, building their Kubernetes infrastructure and spending half a year on that. And when I look at that, I sometimes feel like, is this really the thing that you should be focusing on, or are there other things that you could spend your time better on that would actually make more impact to your customers?
Yeah, I think this is something that we see a lot, not only with Kubernetes clusters, you can also see it sometimes with spending time in developing your custom HR system, your custom hour writing system, building and
Internal
upgrading
tools. Yeah.
internal tools, spending a lot of time on stuff that maybe is not the most primary process of that company. And I call that focusing on core versus context. And I think it's a really important part of building a great engineering culture.
Okay. I think we should do an episode about it because I'm curious on how to improve this.
Okay, well, I have something to say about that, so let's do it.
Okay, let's go.
The Lead Podcast, a podcast for leaders in engineering, architecture, and development.
So, Rene, core versus context. Where do we start? What can you give the definition of what is core and context, so we're all on the same page what we're talking about here?
Yeah, sure. Well, I always start with the why. That is one of my favorite books and one of my favorite quotes. So I always start with the why. So I think the question that you should be able to answer: why are you doing the stuff that you are doing?
Makes sense.
So in your example of creating a Kubernetes cluster, or moving stuff to containers, or bringing your software up to date, or creating your our system in a custom application, the question is why? Why are you doing this? And well, if it is because we want to be more efficient, people are not happy about this tool. But I think the underlying question is, what does it actually matter to the company? And this is where core and context comes in. And how I would like to define core and context is: core are the things, the products, the processes, the tools that you are building within your company that actually differentiate you from your competitors, the things that make you the money. So in all due respect, if you build a Kubernetes cluster, it's great, it's nice and fun work, but it doesn't make you any money necessarily. It's the stuff that lands on top of that Kubernetes cluster. It's the applications that you build for your customers that are actually the things that make you money. On the other hand, there is this context that is, of course, then the things that are really crucial, really important. You need to have them, but it doesn't give you that competitive edge. So the question that you then need to answer is, do I want to spend my valuable time and resources, as in money and people, on these contextual things, or do I want to move them towards the core? And that all boils down to what we call in our engineering culture model a clear digital vision.
Yeah. So in that vision, you define what is your core and what is your context, or how do we go from there?
Yeah, well, defining, I think in your digital vision, you should have a good statement, mission statement, or a vision, or a strategy, or a roadmap, or however you want to phrase it. But at least you need to make sure, like, what are we trying to achieve here with our company, or maybe the IT department or the software development department in your company? What do we want to achieve there?
Yeah.
What is it that we are getting credits for? What is it that we are getting paid for? And how do we make the difference within the market?
Yeah.
And I think that the result of that discussion is your core.
Yeah. So everything that adds to that mission, to why is this company on Earth, and why are we different compared to our competitors? All that goes into your core.
Exactly. So, for example, with a bank, the system that maybe does bank transactions, that is a system of record. There is not much to do there, maybe. It's just every bank has that more or less the same system. Where you can win your customers is that experience that you give to your consumers or to your business customers using an app. So that app or the website or the interface that you can have to interact with your bank, that is where people say, wow, this works so great. Because in the back end, there is not much difference. Every system works more or less the same thing. So then you can focus on building a complete system of record.
Yeah.
Or you can build a great user experience which wins you the customers.
But in the end, you do need that system of record, right? So maybe this is a misconception. And then what I hear people say a lot as well is like, oh, the core is really important stuff, and the context is less important. But the bank without that system of record would not be a bank, right? Because they're not fulfilling their own basic needs to be a bank.
I think it's good that you mentioned that because the context is crucially important. People, systems of records, ERP systems, HR systems, and all those big systems, companies cannot run without them. So they are crucially important.
Yeah.
But the systems are created by companies that have a core business in creating ERP systems, in creating systems that can manage a flow, in systems that can do HR. And they know the complete process. They have a great domain expert on that process. So what you actually want to do is you want to buy these great products coming off the shelf, use them within your company, maybe tweak them here and there a little bit on your needs. But my idea is always keep it as standard as possible, because then you can focus your time on the stuff that matters to you, because you are not an ERP builder or an HR system builder or a system of record builder.
Especially with these kind of tools, it makes more sense. In the bank, having actual a banking system of record is more to the core. But most other companies who manufacture stuff, they actually need an ERP system. And a lot of these ERP projects, they cost millions to configure everything to be really fit into to certain processes that company wants. While on the other hand, you sometimes might think, the ERP manufacturer did this for thousands of companies, so they might probably know how these processes work even better than the things that you came up with yourself.
Exactly. And also the internal tools that you maybe create for your developers or your business people. An internal tool, you can spend 2 development teams creating these internal tools. That's great. But that also takes time away from spending that on stuff that you can actually sell to your customers. So I think that context is crucially important. It can even speed up your core. Because if that is arranged correctly, it gives a lot of flow within your normal delivery processes. So it can never be a bottleneck of your core process.
Yeah.
But it should not have the focus and the wish and the requirement to do everything yourself. You should focus on the stuff that you are good at and that makes a difference for you.
Yeah, because in the core, that's where we want to have our growth, etc., in the market, all those kind of focus. That's where the core is, and that's where, in the end, the investments should go, right? You should invest on a base core layer to get everything up and running.
Exactly.
And then the rest, the majority should go to the...
Exactly, because you can spend your time and money only once. So spend it wisely, I must say. So context, we already discussed it a bit. Context is more the routine stuff, the stuff that you can buy, the SaaS products, the industry standards that you can use and reuse. And I think that's also a great example nowadays with cloud. You can have a cloud platform. You can build your whole own cloud platform like Netflix does. but they have a big advantage. They need this cloud platform to be different than their competitors. But for many companies, a cloud platform is just water and electricity.
It's an enabler for
It's an enabler for the stuff they want to run within the cloud. So why do you want to have a full team or multiple teams building and maintaining the cloud platform, while you can also maybe outsource that to a party that can actually manage that cloud platform for you, so that you can have teams building and running their own workloads on that specific cloud platform.
Yeah. So we started this talk about engineering cultures and the impact of that, and the main pillar that this kicks off is digital vision. What we just discussed. What is a core? What is context? Looking at the different other pillars, how can we see core and context there, or how can we?
Yeah. So, well, our engineering culture model has 8 pillars. One of the first is the digital vision, and another one more related to the process side of things is the empowering operating model. And what we discussed earlier is you can have great digital vision and all kind of great ideas, but if your organization is not suited to actually execute that in a good and decent flow, but and with all kinds of bottlenecks that you have, then you won't be successful. So once you have defined your core and your context, and actually basically what we are talking about now mostly is, of course, your core, what do you want to focus on, then it's also good to stay, how do we organize our teams? So if we look back at a book that we usually also mention, the team topologies, we want to have value stream enabled teams that build and run their software. So if you have a product, how are you going to organize your teams so that they are streamlined on parts or a complete application that is a core application?
Yeah, focusing on bits of the core that they can fully own. Yeah. So also make the right decisions on investing in that piece of the core.
Exactly. Yeah. And then of course what we believe in, DevOps. So they build it and they run it, they maintain the full infrastructure and the code, and they will run on a platform. And I think that is a nice segue into context, because that platform, is that then context or is that core? Will you make a difference with your platform? If you need to have a high available platform that is fully tweaked because of your very highly demanding specific workloads, maybe Netflix is a good example of that, then probably your platform is part of your core business. But if it's just a cloud platform that needs to be secure and compliant and needs to be available and needs to be updated in time, then it's maybe not your core business to have a cloud platform. So you can say, I have a platform team doing cloud, but maybe that platform team is not within my own company. Maybe that is something that I can outsource to someone
managed
else.
services or those kind of things. Or have your platform team there, because I do see platform teams a lot in especially in larger companies. But what you're saying is maybe like the daily maintenance tasks, creating stuff, all those self-service kind of scenarios that you could automate. You could outsource or hire people externally to do that. And then internally, maybe focus more on actual things like adoption, etc. In having those other teams in the core improve their work, helping those teams.
Yeah, exactly. Faster. For example, a developer platform, that is something that you might want to have in-house, because your teams require certain specific things that are not out of the box from the market, but you want to do specific things within your organization fitted to your processes that make the difference in the speed of delivery or cost. So then you can have a team focusing on that part to enable the other teams to do better. Yes.
Yeah, of course, in the end, it is always a discussion of, do we have the skill to invest in this ourselves, right? If you have 1,000 engineering teams, then having a couple of teams building such a platform makes more sense than when you're smaller and you just want to have things out of the box, because it doesn't add up to have people
Yeah.
work on those internal processes.
Yeah, what you commonly see is that scale most of the times requires company to start doing more things themselves. I was also at a company that had common off-the-shelf usage of, for example, Azure Log Analytics. So for all their logging and monitoring, they used the out-of-the-box functionality, and they used the out-of-the-box functionality for some API management tooling and Kubernetes tooling and whatever. But because of the massive scale, the cost was so incredibly high that they decided to actually build a logging platform themselves. If you are a company that has 2 or 3 development teams, you can never have the capacity to build your own logging platform and be cheaper. But yeah, if you are massive, you can save so many dollars.
So initially always start with these SaaS products or any kind of product that you buy off the shelf. And when you start using this really, really well and costs go up, then it might be time to evaluate stuff like, oh, we could cut cost here by actually moving this to a custom platform.
Exactly.
So what I see happening as well is companies building their own HR system and all kind of internal tooling that doesn't add that much, or you're spending a lot of time to get this couple of percent increase in productivity, right? So always have this look on where do I really, really get my benefits. This logging framework example that you mentioned, this was already costing millions, and maybe we can change this by doing it ourselves to thousands, right? So it's
then a business case that you and it's maybe not the core of the company to build a logging platform, but it saves you so much that you can spend that amount of money to other things. So I think that the operating model is really important. How do you organize your organization around the stuff that matters to you? Well, if you then move on to one of the next pillars in our engineering culture, is more the technical pillars, is state-of-the-art software creation and smooth delivery of that software to the customers. And again, also there is really important to see core and context. It's although a little bit different. So it's not so much about, are we going to build this? That is already decided in your vision and empowering operating model. But then it is more like, which piece of this software do I want to build myself? And which piece of this software do I want to actually reuse? Can I buy an API somewhere? Can I use an API that is publicly or privately available? Can I use a component or a library that I can buy or use somewhere open source?
This is always a thing where you talk to developers and they're building these components, maybe some UI components, building, let's say, a sortable table or something, right? And they're spending days or weeks on such a component, and like, is this really a differentiator, or can we just buy this as a default component out of the box for a license? That's often
and that seems very expensive, because then the license cost, like per developer you pay 200 or whatever amount of money per year, and then you think, oh wow, that is we have so many developers, it's so expensive. But one developer spends weeks, months on building those components that of course have bugs and do need to be updated, etc., etc. So in the end, that is always a good choice. But also simple things, and it's getting lesser, I believe, but especially a few years ago, everybody built their own authentication frameworks. Everybody built their own logging frameworks. Everybody built their own dependency injection framework. So everybody has their own implementation of a common pattern that is just widely available.
So what happens a lot in these value streams and these teams we just said, they have, you build it, you run it, so they make choices for all of their own things. Is that a lot of things will be done by multiple teams. They will all be responsible for their own infrastructure. So they will start running their own Kubernetes cluster. They will build their own pipelines. They will come up with all kinds of solutions by themselves. I think we need another pillar in the engineering culture called the power of platforms to also streamline this a bit, right?
Yeah, this really ties into the whole notion of the platform engineering and also the empowering operating model where we have value stream teams and platform teams. So there is probably, if you are a little bit bigger as an organization, probably some team that manages more or less the central infrastructure, because you do not want to duplicate everything over and over again. And then those platform teams, those platform teams are responsible for creating maybe the cloud platform, but also the data platform or the application lifecycle platform like GitHub or something, or the developer platform, which can enable the value stream teams.
Yeah.
And then, of course, and I'm actually not sure myself, is that then context or core? I think there is always some stuff that you need to do and that you need to arrange within your company to enable your core processes. Only the power through platforms pillar also says use as much as possible of things that are out there. Do not build your own developer platform from scratch. Use a tool like Backstage and start building on top of that.
I think it is context, but as we said, context can be really key as well, right? So it is a key component in the whole scaling your software development lifecycle over multiple teams or departments. But it's not adding to the core. You're not differentiating here from your competitors, except for maybe we can execute faster than our competitors.
Exactly. So you always need something for that. And well, the other technical pillar that is a little bit out of scope for maybe this discussion on core and context is the continuity, appropriate continuity. Of course, you also need people within your organization that have eyes on what is happening in your infrastructure. How do we want to deal with support tickets, etc., which is also a little bit of context, but necessary to enable your core processes.
Maybe I think I disagree, because what we see happening with this core and context, if we do it right, is that teams actually have the notion of that they're working on the core and working on the actual output towards your customers, the value that you're creating. And appropriate continuity also says like it should be available enough for your customers, right? And if you build an application for people who work in office hours, then those tools not being online during the night is not a problem, right? So taking those decisions into account, how high available should we make this solution, do fit in the whole core versus context setting.
That indeed makes sense.
So let's just wrap up all the different pillars that we have. We have knowledge driven. Can we make a link to core and context there as well?
Well, I think there is always a link to be made. Of course, you need to think about it a little bit, but you can, for example, put it on knowledge driven. What is the knowledge that you want to have within your organization? And I think making a choice between what is important for us to make money and where do we spend our time and effort and resources and people on, you need to make wise decisions on where to spend your time on. So also in the education and the hiring of the people that you want in your organization. If you want to enable everything in your organization and want to work on everything, you need to have a very broad and diverse working force that can do basically everything. So I think by focusing very deliberately on this is what we are for, you can also hire the right people and build skill and talent development programs to start developing people in that sense.
Yeah, and I also think if you organize your organization in such a way that your teams are actually focused on the core, they also need to get more knowledge about the actual business processes that you're supporting, the people that are your customers, etc. So, yeah, that adds more knowledge, more stuff to think about for developers. So, the whole platforms, etc. Abstracting away certain things from them also allows people to also think about these things, right? We discussed this earlier about the whole DevOps movement. DevOps is hard to do everything. You build it, you run it, focusing on business logic and the stuff that really adds value to your application, but also keeping the lights on your infrastructure and your logging and all of the things. If those are abstracted away, you have more time to get knowledge about what is my core, and I can get more information on how do my customers actually want to use my product, or what would be good ways to improve my product, instead of just focusing on other stuff.
And on the other hand, it's also quite risky because what we also see at customers sometimes is that by moving away a lot of their context, their platforms and all that things, that they don't have the knowledge anymore of the stuff that they need to actually run their applications, which makes them very reliant on now suppliers, consultancy firms, other developers, freelancers. And that's also a risky business. So there needs to be a good balance in where do you want to have knowledge on, which is not only core, but I think it gives nice focus on all kinds of talent development programs that you want to have.
Okay, I think we covered most of the pillars around our engineering culture. So, wrapping things up, what are the key things to summarize this episode? What are the key things that we should take into account as an organization when looking at this core and context digital vision?
Yeah, we mentioned core and context a lot during this this episode, but I think clear communication and decisions in this digital vision that is clear for everybody within the organization. This is what we are doing. This is our core business. If we want to and need to make a decision where we want to spend time and money, this is our primary focus. And that seems very trivial, but unfortunately, you see a lot of companies that just don't have that guiding compass on where to focus their attention on. And I think it's not only on high level, on a business strategic level, but also very small as an individual level. I'm a developer. Where do I want to spend my time on? Do I want to spend time on building my custom logging framework? Or do I want to spend time creating this great new feature in the application that is used by customers, and I use a common off-the-shelf logging framework? So it really is on all levels of your organization. And I think another practical tip is be still reasonable and pragmatic. So what I ended with in the knowledge driven, of course you can decide to outsource everything that is not in your core, but that is also not.
It's also a risk.
That's also a big risk. So you need to also have a bit of your context in-house, or at least the knowledge in-house to be able to maintain that if needed. And of course you can outsource a lot of things that are really, really trivial or do not make any distinction if you move from supplier A to B, but you want to be very careful that you are not linked to a specific supplier I can never leave again and have a lock in there.
Yeah, I think that's a good summarization. So if you're working in a company where you don't have the idea what is actually our core, go investigate, go ask around, what is our mission statement? What is on different levels our core purpose here? Exactly. So you can focus on that more.
And you see a lot of symptoms, right? You see people working on stuff. And if you think by yourself, why are we doing this? maybe just start by asking that question. Why are we doing this?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great way to wrap things up.
Yeah.
It was a nice episode. Hopefully you liked it when you listened to it, and hope you listen again in 2 weeks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The Lead Podcast, a podcast for leaders in engineering, architecture, and development.